Hello and welcome. My name is Nicholas and this is Literally Graphic. And for today I picked up one of my own graphic novels that I haven't read in a while, an old favorite as it were, Castle Waiting Volume 1. This beautiful graphic novel is Words and Pictures by Linda Medley. This particular collection was published in 2006 by Fantagraphics Books, although it was also released in individual issues as well, unless I'm very mistaken. As I mentioned, this is a really beautiful book, really immersive. The art style and the subject matter really go together to immerse one in a faux medieval folktale experience, and as always the book ribbon is a huge plus. Sucker for ribbon bookmarks. Looking into Linda Medley herself, I would like to point out that while I do have some critiques for this particular volume, that no one should take this as a personal attack on Medley herself, especially her if she, for some strange reason, happens upon this. Medley is an extremely talented artist and writer who has enough shit to deal with as it is, and seems to be on a positive trajectory. Besides Castle Waiting, Linda Medley has been a contributing artist on Doom Patrol, Dark Stars, The Batman and Robin Adventures, Death Blow, Justice League America, Family Man, Who's Who in the DC Universe, Green Lantern, Justice League Europe Annual, Stormwatch, The Book of Magic, Team Youngblood, Generation 13, Adventures of Superman Annual, Wonder Woman Supreme, Youngblood Strike Force, The Dreaming, Wildcats, Covert Action Teams, Batman Shadow of the Bat Annual, Fables, Prophet, Dark Claw, the DC Comics Encyclopedia, The Ray, The Big Book of Death, The Big Book of Weirdos, Batman and Superman Adventures World's Finest, The Big Book of Urban Legends, Underworld Unleashed, Batman Devil's Asylum, TV Comics, Endless Gallery, Mr. Miracle, The Kindred, The Big Book of Thugs, The Sandman Presents Chaucer Tales, Batman Mr. Freeze, Batman Four of a Kind, Green Lantern, Baptism of Fire, A Fall of Stardust, The Secret Loves of Geek Girls, and Dignifying Science, among many other titles. Flipping over to the back of the book, Fantagraphics describes Castle Waiting Volume 1 thusly. This graphic novel tells the story of an isolated, abandoned castle and the eccentric inhabitants who bring it back to life. A fable for modern times, Castle Waiting is a fairy tale that's not about rescuing the princess, saving the kingdom, or fighting the ultimate war between good and evil, but about being a hero in your own home. The opening story, The Brambly Hedge, tells the origin of the castle itself, which is abandoned by its princess in a comic twist on Sleeping Beauty. When she rides off into the sunset with her Prince Charming, the castle becomes a refuge for misfits, outcasts, and others seeking sanctuary, playing host to a lively and colorful cast of characters that inhabit the subsequent stories, including a talking anthropomorphic horse, a mysteriously pregnant lady on the run, and a bearded nun. Talk about spoilers. Looking through the Goodreads reviews, I see a couple of people referring to Castle Waiting as too slow, so I would definitely not recommend this to people who need non-stop action and aren't interested in lengthy asides about the backstories of its characters, but it's certainly not the kind of story that just sits around waiting either. No one story ever works for everyone, obviously, that's always the point of all my reviews, but overall this is an extremely popular series, and for good reason. I feel like it might have been nice to have a few more asides that were a bit on the shorter side, but that's just a minor critique, and we certainly get more as the series continues. Despite the fact that this is generally and largely correctly touted as a feminist repurposing, retelling of many classic tropes, viewing the work from a more intersectional perspective is where most of my criticism becomes manifest. To start with, well, it's fine enough to reference some parts of folklore, referring to the Roma as gypsies and actually leaning into the trope that they steal horses and babies is pretty bad. Thankfully, there are better quote-unquote gypsy characters further into the volume, but it still felt like they were being treated more as fairy tale tropes rather than an actual group of people who continues to be persecuted to this very day. Kind of like how some people still use really racist quote-unquote Indian caricatures. I was also made equally uncomfortable by the representation of the Orientalist Caliph during a later aside. Unfortunately, this has a long history to the modern day in books that I have read, including Habibi is another good example of this going very wrong. Besides this major criticism, I was a bit uncomfortable about the way that the bearded nuns were presented, as some felt like they could have been read as trans men rather than cis women with beards. Looking into Bedley's presence online, it does not, however, seem that she is an active TERF, so it seems like it is likely an ambiguous situation that could be TERF, but can also just be more inclusive of female-identified people having facial hair. As a female-identified person with plenty of body hair, I certainly can't argue with that. I just try and remain very suspicious of any instances of TERFdom because that is so insidious and so disgusting. If you haven't checked out the Wikipedia page for the mentioned Saint Wilgefortis, it's a lot of fun and I would certainly recommend it. Going on to my least important critique, I guess the number of heterosexual couples who fall in love was getting a bit tiresome. Obviously, such things are the stuff of fairy tales, and it really wasn't that many, but couldn't we have set a more decisive toe outside the heteronormativity, is all I'm asking. And perhaps it is to come, I forget. I did read volume 2, but what can I say? Beyond centering female-identified characters in this story, class is one of the places where Medley's inclusiveness shines brightly. Everyone in Castle Waiting is equal, and there is a plot about the few remaining serfs of the miller being set free, bad bosses and husbands get their butt kicked. It's a fun time. And as always, bye y'all, keep reading and resist fascism. And as always, I would like to acknowledge that for the most part, all of my videos are filmed and produced on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit, an Anishinaabe people, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat Nation, land covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant.